Hey, welcome to Circle Back to Sunday at Victory Hill. Each week, we're diving deep into the heart of the Sunday morning sermon. Together, we'll unpack the wisdom, share insights, and explore how these messages resonate in our daily lives. We're bringing in voices from all around our community. You'll hear from the incredible teaching team, as well as the amazing individuals who make up our awesome church family. It's not just a podcast, it's a conversation. So whether you are a longtime member or just tuning in for the first time, we invite you to join us as we circle back to Sunday. Good afternoon. Thank you for joining us for Circle Back to Sunday as we kick off Season 1, Episode 3 now. We are on the third week here as we circle back to our Sunday sermon. And we are in our Love Handle series. And I'm joined today by Pastor Trey and Miss Ashley Mitz. So if you haven't seen us around Victory Hill, Pastor Trey is obviously one of our pastors here, or one of our teaching pastors. And Ashley is a huge part of our worship team. She works with our online team as well. So we're very blessed to have both of you all take some time to join us today. So thank you, guys.
Hey, it's an honor to be here. Super excited and glad that I get to chat about Mason's sermon.
Yep.
Man, what an awesome word today.
He did really good.
If week 3 is my first week, then I'm glad that I got some good material.
You know, I lined this up just right. Right? You know, you gotta line the people. But it has been a great series. It's really, really been good. But Mason hit on some points today. There was a couple times I was like, okay, preach, sir. Come on. But he went into the missing ingredient. How did y'all feel about the story about his grandma this morning?
Oh man. So I think most grandmas hang their hat on being able to cook.
Dude, yeah.
And so poor grandma that she couldn't throw down in the kitchen.
Yeah, he did say though her chicken strips were okay with ketchup.
Yeah. Well,
I think I can relate to grandma over here.
Cooking's not your forte?
It is not. I'm very grateful that God blessed me with a husband that can.
A husband that can cook and a stock of ketchup in the fridge.
Yes.
The things that you have to have.
Yes, Jesus.
But I do think that, he did have other grandmas, though, that could cook, so that was fine. Yeah. But I do love that he led with that, and it just kind of set a tone for a good message that had some serious points in it today. But I just want to start off, what was the first thing that stood out to each of you today? I'm gonna let you guys go first.
All right, I'll take this one.
Right.
So I love that when he read the scripture, that he said that you easily could have said, so what? Mm-hmm. You know, you can do all of these things. You can operate in these gifts. You can give away everything that you got. So what? If you don't have love, if you don't have that ingredient, then your conversation of if I means absolutely nothing, because you don't have what's supposed to drive all of those things.
Yep. And just for context purposes, I'm going to read the sermon scripture real quick that we were talking about, because we were in Corinthians, 1 Corinthians today, that if I speak human or angelic tongues but do not have love, I am a noisy gong or a clanging cymbal. If I have the gift of prophecy and understand all mysteries and all knowledge, and I have all faith so that I can move mountains but do not have love, I am nothing. And if I give away all my possessions, and if I over my body to boast but do not have love, I gain nothing. Love is patient, love is kind, love does not envy, it is not boastful, it is not arrogant, it is not rude and not self-seeking, it is not irritable and does not keep a record of wrongs. Love finds no joy in the unrighteousness, but rejoices in the truth. It bears all things, believes all things, hopes all things, and endures all things. Love never ends. But as for prophecies, they'll come to an end, and for tongues they will cease. As for knowledge, it will come to an end. For we know in part, and we prophesy in part, but when the perfect comes, the partial will come to an end. When I was a child, I spoke like a child, I thought like a child, I reasoned like a child, and when I became a man, I put aside childish things. For now we see only a reflection in as a mirror, but then face to face. Now I know in part, then I will know fully, as I am fully known. Now these 3 remain, faith, hope, and love, but the greatest of these is love. For me, the fact that he took the entirety of that instead of that frilly little bit that people use, at your weddings or in relationships or on your Valentine's Day cards, he took that whole context, because it is, I think it's taken out of context too much. What we forget is that this is actually a letter to a church, right, to get them straight.
Mm-hmm. Well, and I think the big thing there is that I want to be all of those things for my wife when we're talking relationally. Like I want to be patient and kind and all of those things for her. But there are certain people that, not so much,
Yeah.
so
They're hard
to
to love.
really take the context of that as it's not just that person that you love or that you're passionate about. It's everybody you come in contact with
Yeah.
that's in your circle. I think that's big.
Yeah. Well, I mean, and we've been talking about how to love others, whether that's, under the verbiage neighbor or whatever, but really and truly, you all have done a great job about helping us to love like Jesus loves. He doesn't pick and choose, right? He loves everybody. And I think that this is a great point to continue on that, but also to see people and their gifts and to love them using your gift, but not as a distraction either. Ashley, was there anything for you that stood out?
I think going along with what you said, I mean, just the statement, the absence of love interrupts the operation of the
Oh, yeah.
gift.
His first point, boom.
And
he
I
come in
mean,
there
that
strong.
was just like lights out for me.
Yeah.
I think for so long, you can serve with the greatest of intentions. And I'm going to be honest, sometimes in the church, they'll come up and they'll be like, great job, good job worshiping. And remembering to humble yourself and to make sure that you are not getting some type of ego out of
Right.
being on stage. I think sometimes you see people in churches doing that, and you take the love out of it when
Yeah.
you start thinking about
Yeah.
yourself, because you need to have that love to truly convict you so that you are allowing God to speak through you and use you, and it's not you putting on a mask.
When he said that worship isn't about entertaining you, it is about worshiping God, because that's what we should be doing. And I think at times we get distracted because we even get told, our church is a little bit about show. I know we've all heard it. And I think that that is a misconception, because I really do feel like we try to be humble about it,
Yeah.
to be intentional, like Ashley was saying, but it's really not the way we do it here at Victory Hill. Maybe it's not for everybody, but it is for people who need it. And God knows that need, and God knows to place those people here. So
Yeah, I wrote down inside of that first point, kind of a drop the mic quote I thought that Mason had was that if they hear our truth before they feel our love, it's meaningless.
ooh.
And so like just the thought of that they can hear our truth, they can hear what we project and things like that, but if they don't feel that love, and that's why like our first impressions and things like that are so very important. Statistics say that somebody decides if they're going to come back to a church within 3 minutes.
That's fast.
And I'm going to tell you, there's no worship music or preaching for most folks. I mean, some people get here right at right at time, but for most folks, none of those things happen before somebody's already made their decision if they're going to come back or not.
Right.
And so just to make sure that everything that we do, that they feel that we love them first.
Oh, yeah.
Is huge, because then we can operate in that gift fully.
Yep. Yep. And I think that that's a great point, though, because like our first impressions, they do work hard. That's another area of our church that I think they're like undersung heroes.
Absolutely.
They show up extra early. They're opening doors. They're a smile. And that to me is like a part of using a gift. Like Mason did touch on gifts today, like a few of the major ones, but I think people forget that even loving somebody through a hug or a smile or a wave, that's a gift.
Oh, for sure.
Because like sometimes my face does not always communicate that I may be wanting to say hi to you, and I may be over there and you're like, Emily looks really mad at me, but inside I'm forgetting to connect all the dots. So our first impression, which is why I'm not on First Impressions, by the way, but our first impression teams, they're great. But he did have a great point, and not to be a noise interrupting. His demonstration of the symbol today was a great one.
It's great. Yeah.
It was funny, but it was powerful. Because I think that can be, like you said, like humbling ourselves. When we don't humble ourselves and we're trying to tell someone how good we are, how good our church is, how good this is, it's missing the truth of
Right.
the heart of
I
it.
think my favorite quote I wrote down today, and this is something my kids laugh about, is sometimes we have to remember to check ourselves before we wreck ourselves.
Yeah.
We do.
He said that that love is the blood in the veins of this church, and I think that's it. You know that we have to always keep that in the forefront of our mind and the things that we do to make sure that love is what's driving.
Yes. And I think that his second point was loving people well requires realigning our definition of what love is. And I love that he, brought up the fact that like someone will be like, well, I forgive you, but I'm not going to forget. And even here in the Bible, it says that love keeps no records of wrong. And I wrote this down. He did not make this point. This is just something that I wrote down. I wrote down karma. You know, a lot of, in our world today, a lot of people are like, well, you know, karma's going to catch up with them. And that to me, that was like a self-check of like, because that's come out of my mouth, you know, and I was like, ooh, that is kind of keeping a record of wrongs. That's just like me hoping the universe and God keeps up with it. And eventually down the road, you know, I'm like, that's not godly thinking. That karma is really and truly, that's not loving somebody like God. That's hoping something catches up to them in the future, wherein I need to be better about being like, okay, God, yeah, that hurt. That was painful. But like, I hope that you pour into them. You touch their life where they need it. You know, heal what is causing this issue or find a relationship with this person. And he said that he plays the long game by loving and not giving up. Yeah. And I think that we all need to be a little bit more intentional. Well, I'm going to speak for myself. I need to be a little bit more intentional about that because the forgetting is hard. And that's where you got to put in that little bit of work. But being careful about how we use our verbiage too. Like karma now has a whole different perspective after today.
Yeah. And I think back to that whole being careful thing. When he talked about being boastful, you know, maybe I am guilty of, hey, baby, look, I'm sweeping the floor. I'm folding the laundry.
Look at me.
Yeah, right. And making sure that everybody can see that.
Taking that selfie with your load of laundry.
Right. There may be ulterior motives there, but, you know, I think he said it best that we need to do it just because we love them.
Yeah.
You know? And not bring that attention to ourselves, but understand that the purpose of our love and the purpose of our action is to simply serve someone else.
Yeah. Yeah. It's hard because I started realizing, as you know, like he said, that people use this a lot in weddings and things like that and I've heard, well, interject your person's name in there. Are they those things? But I'm like, why are we not looking at ourselves? Why are we not saying, am I patient? Am I kind? But also it tells us what love is not more than it tells us what love is. And I never really focused on that until he started breaking that down today. And it was like, it is not arrogant. It is not rude. It is not irritable. It is not self-seeking. And it's like, how many times have I just ignored when I've kind of been one of those things? Because we always look at the love is patient, love is kind, and all this gentle stuff when really and truly it's like, no, it's not this way. Yeah. I needed kind of that self-check like you were talking about, check yourself before you wreck yourself, and that it endures all things. I wrote, ooh, that's tough.
Oh, yeah.
Because if you've ever had anybody in your life that's hard to love, you can go through some things and you want to give up. And that's the hard part, is to not give up and to endure with them. And like he said, if you're in an abusive relationship, he said, call 911, which is true. We do want to reiterate, we are not speaking if you're in a abusive relationship, right? We want you to get help you need, even if that's reaching out to our team here. You know, let us help you. We can help you find resources. But don't be a doormat. You know, we're not asking you to stay in relationships or friendships or anything where it's not healthy for any party, because it goes back to the message last week. That double-edged sword is going to cut that relationship and heal on both sides. If you're doing it through God, if you're doing it the right way. But it is tough. It's a fine line to walk. And I think that's where, as believers, our faith needs to come in. And for those who we're loving that aren't believers, we have to kind of put a little bit of extra faith in there for them.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think too, when he talked about that it doesn't take joy in unrighteousness, and when he talked about those people that we give speaking privilege in our life, that really hit me. I mean, he did talk about our relationship together, but that relationship is reciprocal. So just as much as I can say to him, Mason, you're being stupid, quit. There have been times in my life where he said, Trey, you're being stupid, quit.
Yeah.
Yeah, because I do stupid stuff a lot, you know. And
well,
come on, you're not supposed to agree with that. But it's so important to have those people.
Yeah.
But to draw that line. Because I see like so many people in our culture that give speaking privilege in their life to people that do not matter.
Yeah.
Like people who their opinion shouldn't mean anything, but we give them privilege in our life. And I think this scripture kind of just re-edifies and drives the fact that, yes, we want to have people who can speak to us.
Oh, yeah.
But we also have to have people that we are able to, just like he said, in one ear and out the other. that we don't take people whose advice is not needed, people whose advice is not helpful, we let that go.
Yeah.
I think my favorite thing about that is I've had to learn the true meaning of loving from afar.
Yeah.
I think, like you're talking about these people that don't speak positively into your life. And how does that look? Like, how does loving from afar really work? And I think that's just such a hard concept, but it's something that I've had to learn over the years, because I would love to try to help everybody. I would love to be able to love everybody, but there's some people that just did not speak positivity into my life. And so loving them from afar for me meant praying for them.
Yeah.
And let me tell you, sometimes praying for people that you really don't like or have wronged you is the hardest thing to pray. You have to set your feelings aside and just ask God to intervene.
Yeah.
On your behalf sometimes.
Yeah, that's a tough one. That's
I don't
a tough
know
one.
if that was.
No, I mean that's just being honest, and that's what this is about, is us coming back and having an honest conversation about what the sermon was, because there could be someone out there actually that's struggling with that, and to know that they're not the only one that struggled with that. But I do believe for people, especially if you're new to faith and this is a new journey for you, God's going to really start working in those relationships in your life, and I think that you've got to be prepared for that. We would be terrible Christians to tell you that everything's going to remain the same. But we want to love you through. That's why we say we do life here as a family. But you got to be prepared. Some of those friendships that maybe aren't serving God, he's gonna work in those. Mm-hmm. And you can still love those people, but like you said, love them from afar. And maybe that is prayer. Maybe that is praying for them. Maybe that is just leading your life as an example that draws them closer to God. Because ultimately, that's what we should be doing, is drawing others closer to God and not us.
Yeah, and I think that all plays into that third point.
Yep.
That the presence of true love elevates, our level of maturity.
Yes.
That as we go through this journey, and my journey may have started at a different time and a different place than yours, but we all have this journey that we're on, and our maturity continues to grow and to evolve and to develop. And so the purpose of this is that where I am on my journey, I'm helping somebody who hasn't gotten there yet.
Yep.
But I'm also looking to someone who is further in their journey and allowing them to help me.
Yes.
It's really allowing that, love to evolve things in our life.
Yeah. And I said, I was like, when he's like, grow up. And I was just like, oh, okay. Well, you're right. Because the spiritual maturity is so different than what we look at in life as being mature, right? We have this whole perception of what being mature means, but
Don't you remember being in high school and people who thought they were
been a while.
A while.
We're not going to count the years.
but those people who thought they were so mature, right?
Oh, yes. Yes.
And so that,
yes.
Shamefully, that's what came to my mind when he was talking about maturity, because I think about times in my life when I thought I was mature.
Oh, yeah.
And I had no idea.
Yeah.
Right?
Yep.
And I think that's really one of the things that maybe this sermon hit me in the face with the most, is that, even as somebody who is a pastor here, on our speaking team, my maturity is still evolving. And so this series is really challenging me, because that love part is hard.
It is hard.
But that maturity is something that continues to grow.
Yeah.
And I think about stuff that I hold on to. He referenced the scripture where it said, we're kind of like little kids that are playing with toys that are going to go away.
Yep.
When we worry about gifts and we worry about the things that are important but aren't love, then we really haven't made it there yet.
I had because I was doing counseling for a while, actually until recently. And one of the things that she had told me was, even if you think that it's not a problem, ask yourself, is it an idol? Mm. And that hit me so hard, because it was something so minor. And I know you all are aware I've had a lot of health issues the past couple of years. And one of my problems was checking my weight, but it was becoming an idol. But until that was how it was worded to me, that was an unhealthy problem and it wasn't serving God. Mm. And when she said it that way, I was like, oh my gosh, wow. I'm not loving myself in that moment. I'm not loving to show God in that moment to even myself, because sometimes I think we're guilty of not just loving others. If we can't love ourselves, you know, we're not serving God either, because he made us.
Yeah.
And so I think that's one of those things, like, is the toy that you're playing with, is it more important to you? Is it a little bit of an idol? Has it become something you feel like you can't let go, even though God's asking you to?
Maybe I need to check my weight like part of the time when you're checking yours. And maybe that would get me.
Are we going to get a support group?
I loved you through the Love Handle series. Okay.
Yeah.
I loved you through that.
I was keeping my love handle, so I was still part of the service.
Listen, when he brought that image up today, he brought that image up of his youth sermon.
Okay, can we speak to that for just a minute? Though? I mean, so that picture, that person did not have love handle. When you gotta pinch that hard, for a love handle, it doesn't exist.
I'm just kidding.
Yeah.
Let me show you a love handle.
Listen, that's why I'm glad there's a table here.
I know, and Mason's like, they vetoed it, and I'm just like, sir,
there's a reason.
There's a reason they vetoed that, buddy. Lots of reasons. Actually.
We're gonna love that one from afar.
Yeah.
We're gonna pray for him through that. Oh man, that was funny. But you know what I'm saying. Like, there's things in everyone's life that maybe it's a habit that you do every day where it's distracting you from what God's calling you to do. And I think just hearing, well, those terms, like, is that an idol to you? You got to check yourself, because sometimes even as Christians we think, oh, we don't do that. We don't do that. I don't do that. I don't have a problem with that. Like, just like this. Oh, I'm patient with everyone. You used to check me in traffic.
Yeah, right.
Check me in traffic.
But Mason spoke to that, when he said that our focus needs to be on things that will last for eternity.
Yes.
And so that's the thing, as we think about the things in our life that we give time and we give attention.
Yeah.
That our focus should shift. Even a lot of times those are good things.
Yeah.
But sometimes good is the enemy of great.
Ooh,
okay. And so I think what we do is we give attention to things and we justify those. I do this.
Yep.
I justify those because they're good things.
Mm-hmm.
But is what God's calling me to better than good?
Right.
And so we have to give our attention, to those things that are going to last, not the things maybe that gratify us,
right,
or those things that feel good, or those things that other people notice. But we're giving, our attention to the things that God has called us to.
Just like in the verse it said, it's not self-seeking.
Yeah.
Yeah. Just circling back to that part of the.
Y'all are talking about toys and God and what he has for you. And I think of this meme that pops up on my Facebook at least once a year because I shared it one time. It's a memory. It's a good one.
Okay.
You're laughing already. But it's a picture of this little girl, and she's holding on to this brown teddy bear. It's a cartoon picture. And in front of her, it's Jesus, and he's kneeling down at her. And behind him, he has this massive white teddy bear.
Okay.
I've seen where I'm going.
I've seen it.
Okay.
Yeah. Listen, when you say meme, it makes me nervous.
It's a good one. But every time I see that, it just breaks my heart for how am I holding on to something as a security blanket? And here, the ultimate security blanket is asking me to just hand it to him.
Yep.
And he's going to give me so much greater, but I'm so invested in what the world has told me my security blanket is. And I think that faith, and I don't know, y'all are talking about that, and that image just keeps coming up as, are we allowing God to really work through us so that we can love like he does?
And it's not just hurting us.
Holding on.
How many other people is that holding back?
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. I think a lot of times we operate with a mindset of want or have not had because of experiences in our life. We hold on to things because maybe at one time we didn't have those things. But God is calling us to a spirit of excess. That we will let go of what we have, knowing that He has something better.
Yeah.
And that we can relinquish control and trust Him with what's next. Because for me at least, there are times in my life where I can't let go of something because I can't imagine my life without it, because there was some time when I didn't have it.
Yeah.
Right. But maybe God has something. He has the bigger teddy bear behind his back for me, and it's relinquishing that control.
Yeah. And to kind of take that a little bit further, I wrote down what he said was, maybe it's not that you don't love people enough, but that your love towards God isn't as deep as it once was. Because we do need to love others, but I think in that the first commandment is to love God, right? That was the first commandment that he gave us. And if we're not doing that well, we obviously can't love others. So if we're not loving God enough to trust him that he's got this giant teddy bear behind his back, then how are we going to be able to use our little teddy bear to love on somebody else, you know?
Yeah, he said he said in the gospel presentation that we're missing the main ingredient, that we're eating, but it ain't good, right? You know,
True.
so like there's nutrition, but it don't taste good.
No.
And so if you've been hungry, it might be hard to let that go.
Yep.
But yeah, so he has something that tastes really good.
You wrote down that was a good point you wrote down. Totally missed that one. Look at you. All right. Well, to wrap up, I always ask this for everybody that's on with me. What was your biggest takeaway? Whether that's just a point that was made or something that you're going to take away into your next week. You want to go first? Trey went first last time, so I'm
There we go.
throwing you out there.
Right? This whole thing makes me nervous. Let's see. I don't know. I think I'm really going to stick with the absence of love interrupts the operation of the gift. The word that comes to mind when I think of this, and this is just for me right now, is just remembering to humble yourself, and to not only show love and to remember that we need that love, but also to make sure that I love God enough that I am allowing him to work through me.
Yeah.
I think that's kind of where I'm at. Just
Do you want to go next?
Yeah. So
make
for
me sound
me,
good.
you know, I think, you know, he said something that punched me in the face,
Okay.
and I wasn't very happy about it at the time because it didn't feel good. But
He's had time to reflect.
right, it's fact that kids get offended.
Mm-hmm.
Right, you remember when he said that? That he said
did.
that kids get offended, and so I know for me that's something that I need to work on.
Yeah.
You know, to work on being offended, and I'm a pretty tolerant person on a lot of things.
Yeah, I would agree with that.
But there are certain parts of my life and certain reactions and certain situations where I am quick to get offended.
Ooh, okay. Yep.
And so I just need to work on loving through that.
Mm-hmm.
And he, you know, he talked about that love for God and people is the main motivation of our life.
Right.
And if that's the case, then being offended just goes away.
Oh, yeah.
And so I need to work on making sure that I'm not offended to a point that it prevents me from being who God called me to be.
I wrote that down too. The love for God has to be our motivation.
Yeah, he said that but I love that he pointed this out, that God is the personification of love.
Right.
So that he is love.
Yep.
And I thought that was huge.
For me, it was also a little bit of a slap in the face because he said it shouldn't be about what the church is doing for you, but what are you bringing to church?
Yeah.
Yep.
And that for me was huge because, I mean, we all serve in different areas. All of us today do. But sometimes, like you said, you got to check yourself. You got to be humble. But if your goal in coming to church is to just get something out of it, even if you're serving, is to get recognition, you're doing it wrong. Mm-hmm. You're doing it wrong. You have to have the motivation to love others the way that God loves you in order to really fulfill your gift. And I will never forget the first time that I served at Victory Hill was our sportsman's dinner. And it was the first time that I had served. And I left so exhausted that night, but I left so fulfilled. Mm-hmm. And I think that clicked with me because, you know, everybody's like, well, I'm going to do what makes me happy. But for me, it shouldn't be about what makes you happy, because this was just a reminder when he was saying that, like, you shouldn't want to just leave church being happy. You should want to leave church being like, oh, that's a good one for me, you know? Yeah. And then coming back and circling back and serving others in the same way are you getting fulfilled to where you're loving on others? That should fulfill you.
Yeah. Like when he said, are you giving up your seat?
Yeah.
Right?
Yes.
You know, like giving up, and our seat represents our space, our comfort.
Yeah.
Comfort. You know,
it is a comfort zone.
And so are we willing to walk outside of comfort to fulfill what he's put in front of us?
Yeah. And just like he said, who would get up and stand at the back,
you
know, just for the church to be full? And I was like, I would love that. I would love that. It would be amazing. And we really hope that if you're newer to Victory Hill and you're tuning in and you're listening, connect with us, right? We always say that we're here. We don't do life alone, but our mission statement is really that we are helping people to find and follow Jesus where they live, work, and play. Mason did reiterate that today, and that's true. So if you check out Victory Hill on Facebook, YouTube, Instagram, we're kind of out there everywhere, you'll find that we have a digital connect card. And when we talk about that, it's just your way to connect with us. Mm-hmm. So if you need a prayer request or next steps or anything, we want to encourage you to reach out to us using that, or you can email us. There's so much information on the website. And Pastor Trey can attest that if you send us a prayer request, those are prayed over.
Absolutely.
Every single week, all the time. So we take that seriously. But in this, I know we touched on some touchy subjects that, maybe you're in a hard relationship right now. If it is dangerous, please reach out to someone. Please reach out to the authorities. We want you to be safe. That is just another way that we can love on you.
Sure. Love is not a punching bag.
No,
right?
No.
And so we would never want anybody to be unsafe,
No.
Physically, emotionally, spiritually. And so absolutely, while we're talking about loving through things, there are also situations where help is needed, and then
Yes.
and then love will happen.
Yes.
And sometimes in those situations, you don't realize that the person that needs help is the one doing the abusing.
Yeah.
But God didn't intend for that. So that we just
No.
want to make a point that
Yeah.
that we have brought up a couple things that could be traumatic for people. So we want to make sure that we're reiterating how we truly feel about that. But we're so blessed every week for you all to join us as we circle back to the Sunday morning sermon. And you got to stay tuned because next week we'll have an all new podcast. And then we're going to jump into a new sermon soon, right?
It's coming up.
It's coming just a couple weeks. So stay tuned and we will see you guys back.